my name is Liv Erickson. I work at Mozilla in their emerging technology group on mixed reality. So if you're familiar with some of Mozilla's effort in virtual and augmented reality, you may have heard of A-Frame, which originated there and is now maintained by Supermedium. You might have heard of Firefox Reality, which is a browser for browsing web content in VR. And I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing at Mozilla on social VR and VR creator tools. Me personally, I've been pretty dang excited about VR on the web since 2015 when it was just starting out as an idea. I saw on Twitter someone was like, hey, we're thinking about bringing VR to the browser. And I tried out building a demo on my 2014 MacBook that didn't have a dedicated GPU. It ran at 4 frames per second. And I was like, this is the coolest thing. This is the future of VR. So I'm pretty dang excited that we're so close to the arrival of the WebXR standards. In the fact that it is Halloween today, I thought I would throw back to 2015 when I actually dressed up as Firefox before I joined Mozilla for Halloween. Did not come in costume today, but figured it was a good time for this. So why multi-user experiences? Why social? Well, just yesterday I was on a phone call talking about VR with someone, and I got this quote. VR is usually something you do alone. I disagree. I've been working in social VR now for a little bit over 3 years, and I think VR is way, way better with other people. We're social people by nature, so being able to use technology to improve how we're communicating and collaborating together is really critical, and it's where my passion for immersive technologies lie. We already do so many things in our day-to-day lives. It's connecting people together and with other people that it makes sense that as we're thinking about these emerging technologies, we're building applications that have social multi-user experiences kind of at their core. So I'm going to talk briefly about the components of multi-user 3D applications. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the practices that we use at Mozilla when we think about building multi-user applications. And then I'm going to get into some fun stuff where we can actually create some scenes and prototype our own multi-user experiences using the platforms that we're building. So other people, it's a pretty big component of a multi-user 3D application, because if you're by yourself, by definition, it is not a multi-user application. So other people is a pretty good start. Something to do. You need something that brings people together. We seek out opportunities to connect with other people by sharing experiences or our thoughts or ideas and our passions. So giving people something to do in 3D space is another pretty critical experience. And there's usually a shared environment. And I say usually because whenever I say that you have a shared environment when you're building social VR experiences, I'll get someone that says well, why does that need to be the case? And it's true, it doesn't. There are probably going to be applications in the future with mixed reality where I will see something that you won't. We see that with user interfaces right now. There might be cases where we have different understandings of applications that are merged together that we're looking at, and my theme for my world might be Harry Potter and yours could be Star Wars. But usually at this stage of development for multi-user applications, there's a component of having a shared environment where the base reality is something that everybody can see and interact with. So components of a multi-user applications, there's a couple of different ways you can build multi-user applications that apply to building 3D content. You have peer-to-peer multi-user interactions where the clients in an application are sending data to each other. So if you have 3 people connected, your individual client will be sending information to both other people. This can present some challenges with scalability, because if you're in a room with, let's say, 20 different clients, your personal computer or whatever you're accessing that from is going to be responsible for distributing out that information to other people. And when you talk about real-time avatar movement, when you're talking about head rotation, when you're talking about voice data and all other kinds of media that you might be streaming, that gets really heavy. So for the other, for supporting larger architectures, there's the client-server architecture, and that's what I'm more familiar with because that's what we're building on what I'm working with at Hubs. It's a good opportunity to look to your left or right if you want some entertainment. There's a giant horse running around out in the lobby. Anyway, so client-server architecture of multi-user applications. In this case, you have a server that's kind of handling all the processing and distributing information to the clients that are connected into an application. So for hubs, what that means is that when I'm moving around and I'm sending avatar data, I'm not sending that over 25 different streams to other people. I'm sending it once to the server, which is then compositing all of the stuff going on and relaying it to everyone else. So building hubs, what is hubs? I keep talking about hubs. Hubs is a web-based multi-user experience that we're working on at Mozilla that is a collaboration and communication tool. It makes use of browser APIs to provide a VR interface to immersive collaboration, but it's not required. I don't have a VR headset up with me. I have given talks with VR headsets on. It is not the most comfortable thing to do, and you can't see my face for most of it, so I try not to do that as much anymore. But you can bridge these shared multi-user spaces by allowing users to connect via their phone, their desktop, VR headsets. I think another speaker was kind of talking to this morning, that you need to make it more accessible right now to an audience who may or may not have access to these headsets. In this case, we were testing out a new red panda avatar that I had created, which is why everybody dressed up. Sorry about that. I'm too excited about being a red panda. So going back to the hubs architecture, there are a number of different core code repositories that we have that kind of sit at these different layers. These are the three main ones for our application, but there are some others that feed into different parts as well. And these aren't the only options if you're building a web-based multi-user application that you could use. Just the ones I'm most familiar with. Show of hands, who in here would say they fall more on the development side? Like writing code, building apps. And what about the art side or like content side? Okay, so there's a bit of a mix in here. My title is product manager. My background's in programming, but I've spent a bunch of time trying to learn 3D art. So I'm not going to go super, super deep into this architecture, but I do want to give an overview of it. I'll try to present this at like where it hits all of those different components. So hubs, the client code itself, what you'll see when you connect to hubs.mozilla.com is all contained in a repository on GitHub called Hubs. Very convenient. And this is where you can, as a developer, if you wanted to create your own multi-user experience based on the Hubs code base, if you just want a custom client where you can put your own logo and branding on an experience, custom avatars, custom environments, you can take the client code and run with that, and that's all you need to worry about. We have our data transport layer, which is called Janus, and it's a relay service that uses WebRTC and WebSockets to relay voice information, avatar data, from the different clients to the server and back. And then we have our server code, which is called Reticulum, and in addition to doing all of the fun magic of getting everybody's information ready to send out to all of the clients that are connected, also hosts a number of external services so we can pull in information from other services on the web and integrate those into Hubs. So an example of this could be media consumption by watching a Twitch or a YouTube stream. The Reticulum server will pull down that information from a given YouTube or Twitch URL and feed that out to the clients. So right now, the Hubs architecture supports 25 users concurrently in avatars, but we also provide a layer on top of the 3D rooms where people can just observe what's happening and interact via chat. So if you have an instance where you maybe don't actually need everybody to be in the room physically, you can support larger groups of viewers who have a little bit, like if you've watched a Twitch stream, you have some of that agency of chat to see the objects in the room, to hear what the people are talking about, but you don't actually have to be in there sending all of that information to everyone else. As I mentioned, with the server infrastructure, that voice information and the avatar movement is relayed to reduce load on the individual clients. It uses WebSockets and WebRTC. What this means is that you can create private rooms on the Hubs infrastructure. And as I, again, already said, Reticulum provides external services. So if you're curious about the source code for each of these different components, I've linked them in here. I'll send out links to the slide and make sure that slides that they're all, that you all can access them. So the interesting part about this model is that we've actually heard instances of people taking one piece of this, like, oh, we want to use Janus to relay our own multi-user content that has nothing to do with hubs, or we want to build out our own extensions to our own version of a reticulum server. So being able to kind of componentize those different parts of a multi-user application from our perspective is really interesting because we get to see the cool stuff that people are using these different components for and compare that and see how it differs from what we're doing to pull all this together into the service that we offer. So taking a step back from the development side, we have a couple of core guiding principles for building multi-user applications in social. Who here has used a social VR application before or played a social multi-user video game? Most people. So even if you haven't directly experienced something like this, not all experiences with other people on the internet are positive ones. I think that's probably a safe thing to say. So we have a couple of guiding principles that we use for building multi-user applications that I like to share because, in my opinion, they're equally as important as the technology. So we think that the same principles that made the web work originally, so being able to distribute things through a URL so that people can access them on their own devices, having a lot of rich support for different types of authoring tools and open protocols will be necessary for broadly available multi-user experiences. It's a little bit lonely if you show up into an application and there's no one there because it's limited to the relatively small pool of people who already have access to maybe a specific headset or a specific operating system. Everybody needs to be able to create immersive content that can be made social. If only a couple of developers could ever create web content starting out, we wouldn't have had the ecosystem that evolved to where it is today. So being able to make it really easy for people to create multi-user content for VR, but also support other types of devices is a pretty critical step. It's applicable to more than gaming. A lot of the times, people's first experience to a multi-user 3D experience is gaming. But when we think about the impact that immersive technologies can have, there are a lot of other use cases where being collaborative or communicating together in these shared spaces where you're embodying the same physical location and you're able to bring in content from all over the web, you get these really powerful tools that start to allow different flows for work. It allows you to stay connected to people all over the world, regardless of where they are. And while it can get into the realm of very silly, see the Red Panda crew from earlier, it's applicable to a lot more than gaming, and it's very, very powerful for bringing people together who are geographically distributed. And we think that it shouldn't be controlled by a single group or organization. Like the web open protocols, it's really important that what we're working on can be taken and built upon by other people without our involvement. If you want to read a really good kind of overview of more of our guiding principles, you can check out the Web Emergent Metaverse on our GitHub wiki for a project that we're calling Hubs Cloud, which will make it even easier for people to take what we've built with Hubs and create their own multi-user experiences on their own architecture and infrastructure. So what I'll focus on now is the create side. Making it really easy for people to create content is something that I'm personally very passionate about and that I'm very excited my team at Mozilla shares. So I'm going to talk about Spoke, which is our web authoring tool for Hubs. And I've done workshops in the past where I put the link up to a shared Hubs room and I have everybody in the workshop jump in, and that's the end of the workshop because they just start playing with everything and they don't actually step back and go through the creation process. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'll share the link at the end of the slides and you can do that. I like giving people the freedom to structure their workshops independently. But I'll talk just a little bit about Spoke so you know what it is before we really have fun. So the goal of Spoke is to improve access to creating multi-user content. Before I started working on social VR, I built a lot of small little virtual and augmented reality applications, actually sitting here in this office. I used to work at Microsoft and was here when the reactor first opened. And creating multi-user content felt very big and scary. Like, how do I network hands? How do I network voice? How do I network this basketball so that if I pick it up and throw it, it doesn't stay where it is for someone else. And so what we want to do is we want to embrace web principles to make content creation easier for people. regardless of their background. The interesting thing that I found working in VR over the last 5.5 years is that it's this really beautiful blend of like human interaction and software and art that not a lot of other types of applications really grant. And so making it so that anybody, regardless of their background, can come in and contribute and build these experiences is really, really important. So with Spoke, it's built on remixing what people have already made. There's a huge wealth of really, really great 3D content out there that's licensed under the Creative Commons license, and so we take that and build on that to make it possible to build unique 3D environments through the idea of remixing. When you create environments using Spoke, you can download them as a GLB file format. Who's familiar with GLB and GLTF? Okay. About half. So this is a file format that's based actually off of like a JSON structured document and lets you specify things like 3D models, textures, behaviors, lights, and in scenes essentially, and describe scenes in a way that can be customized to the different application that you're building for. So we put in specific stuff to our avatar GLTF models so that they animate and their heads grow and scale and shrink as a user is talking. That's a component that wouldn't really be useful in most other people's applications, which is why GLTF and GLB are very powerful ways to create content. We also have the ability to publish to hubs for instant use in a multi-user space. For things like tours or classroom environments, this is really a really quick way to either prototype an application that you can then go build out with more customized features in an engine, a different engine, or just use as is. We've seen teachers who build out immersive environments for classrooms using these tools because it's really quick to just publish. Everyone pops in the room in a headset or on their computers, and they're in that shared space, and they don't need a lot of custom components. Again, we aim to be super configurable about what we can offer depending on the need for a specific application. So the code for this, for Spoke, if you want to view the tool itself, hubs.mozilla.com/spoke. If you want to view the source code, github.com/mozilla/spoke. So let's go hands-on because that's the really fun part. If you want to follow along with what I'm doing up here, the first place we're going to go is to a Glitch website, quick-spoke.glitch.me, where I'll list out a couple of sample environments, and I'm going to walk through the process of creating a multi-user space using Spoke and Hubs. If you just want to experiment with Spoke and you want to just click on this, go to the editor, and start playing around with stuff, this is where you can go. And I'm also going to open up a room for people to start interacting. So if you go to hub.link and enter this code, you can jump in as well. Whenever I open up a room to an audience, I do like to say that this event and this space is governed by a code of conduct, and the virtual room is as well. So as you jump in, please do keep that in mind. Be respectful of other people who are in the virtual space. And if it gets feisty, I will shut it down. But please don't make me have to do that. So great. Hopefully everybody had a chance to go to the link they wanted here. If you haven't, go to the first link because the other ones are on that page. So I'm going to jump out of here now. And if you did go to the website linked in there, quick-spoke.glitch.me, you'll see the first link is some slides. So if you want to go back and review anything that I've already talked about, feel free, jump in there. I'm going to point you now, okay, I see people have joined, a lot of people have joined, pretty much everybody in the room has joined the lobby, which is awesome. So you can now see Hubs. Feel free to hang out in here if you want. I'm going to jump back into the Spoke side if you want to follow along with building that. Hello to whoever found the chat. Yeah, and so I'll just quickly go through this workshop page here. So if you want to start and build an environment based off of one of these templates, if you download this .spoke file and then go to hubs.mozilla.com, you'll be able to create a new project. It doesn't matter what template you pick because you'll replace whatever's in the template projects with this legacy Spoke scene. I put in a conference room, I put in a 3-story house, and then I put in just a goofy little castle environment that I've made. But really, if you start with any of these or start with any of the templates in Spoke, you'll really be able to kind of see the vast array of types of environments that people have made. If you want the GLB file, in fact, I'll do this first because it's really quick. You can also just download these scenes as GLB files. So as an example of this, using this content outside of hubs, I have an example A-frame scene that loads in one of the environments that I built with Spoke. So you can actually see the environment itself here in the Spoke editor. You've got this editing window. If you've done any kind of 3D programming or 3D art, this probably looks quite familiar because it's fairly standard to have a viewport and an assets panel and properties. And over here, I have the conference room open, but this one I loaded in from the Spoke GLB of the 3-story house. And this is just an A scene element that's loaded in a GLTF component. If you look at the source on this page, you'll be able to see that. So a few things that we put into the GLTF that we use in hubs that you would have to write manually if you were going to use this in your own web content. You would probably need to do something else about the skybox. We handled the skybox in hubs. And then any kind of collision or floor plan elements, you also have to write. So that's, again, something that's a custom component for these environments. But you can see here that even outside of just hubs in a standard A-frame scene, you can get an environment that's been created. So let's go back to the fun stuff. So in Spoke, if you've opened up one of the files from this workshop page, you'll have some predefined stuff here to kind of click around and play with in a starting point. If you just jumped in from either the tutorial, you might have a wide open crater. And if you just started a new project, you may have something totally different. So like I mentioned, the main part about Spoke is the component composition element. So over here in the assets panel, you can see the different types of elements that are supported in Spoke. I've got some spawn points in here because I'm going to use this as a room for multiple users, and it's really nice to have multiple places for people to land so that if you have a whole bunch of people jumping into the room to start with, they're not all landing right on top of each other. And I've built this with pieces of our architecture kit, which we actually just released on Tuesday. So this is a specific type of 3D model that we've provided that people can use to build their own applications with. So like in this case, I've got some ceiling pieces here. The floor is all done with that, and the walls and the door. Like maybe I decide I don't like this door. I want to change it to a different one, or just maybe not have a door at all. Anyone play The Sims, ever do something like that? And so there's also opportunities to auto search from Sketchfab or Google Poly. So let's say I wanted a flower pot, a different flower pot for the conference room. I don't know, I like putting flowers into my meeting spaces. It feels like a really nice little touch. So I'll take this one out, and I can just click this. Oops. I usually use this with a mouse, and I completely forgot about it today. And I can just bring this object in, and I can say, okay, here's, where my flower pot's going to go. And I can look around and move this in the space. Let's put it in the center, and maybe I want like 4 of them or something, because maybe it's a meeting about plants. So in the interest of time, I won't just go through here and like spend an hour or so making a totally different environment. But let's say you've spent a bunch of time to put together these elements. I mentioned you can export it as a GLB. So if you go into File, Export as a binary GLTF, you can get that right there from the Object menu. And if you want to use it in the Hubs room, you will publish something to Hubs by clicking on the Publish to Hubs button. And my computer is a little bit slow right now because I've had these windows open for quite a bit of time. There we go. It'll save the project. I'll publish this. You can choose if you want your scenes to be remixable or published in the scene directory that we have in Hubs. It's up to you. And as this exports, we'll come back over into the Hubs room. I see there's been some nice Halloween additions, which is excellent. And I see folks are figuring out how to change avatars. Also excellent. So if I come back over here, actually, I feel like there's probably too many people to do conference room A. So maybe I'll change scenes to something that's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to come in here because I'm the room creator. I have these capabilities, but not everybody who makes or who comes into the room will. Let's try the spiral tower and change that up and see. So I changed the scene. It's going to take a minute to update, especially because we're doing it all at once on guest conference Wi-Fi. And so it's starting to load in here, and you can see that relatively quickly. I mean, I had the scenes pre-made. They took me each of those took me about an hour to do. I'm able to create different environments for social VR context. This one in particular is taking a little bit longer than I expected, probably because we're all doing it at once. There we go. No worries. So now we've changed the environment here, and you can see that we're in a totally different space, and we're still together. So some of the capabilities that we have thought were kind of important for creating just really general multi-user experiences are things like the ability to remix objects and bring them in. So I saw someone brought in a pumpkin. I feel like a ghost might be too scary. Search for pumpkins. Oops. Yeah, so we've done a lot of work over this year to, there are no pumpkins in Google Poly? Really? That seems so surprising. Oh, that would do it. Thank you. So we can get some like stickers and GIFs in here. But yes, so we've done a lot over the last year specifically to work on the optimization of the scenes and of the clients themselves. We did initiate the hard cap at 25 to partially reduce some of the, like we'd see people who were coming in past that and putting a lot of heavy content into the scenes and like videos. So we've been trying to make that experience better, but I mean, I think that there's going to be more ways that we can optimize and improve, especially as the platform matures. And yeah, so the low poly objects are great. That was one of the driving forces behind the implementation of the architecture kit, is that they're consolidated into a single mesh and were built to be nice looking but relatively low poly things. A lot of the walls have like no back faces, so we've made as many optimizations we can to the content pieces that can be configured. Hello. So you can see, I brought in this pictures. Images are one thing. You know, we think that there's a lot of potential in enabling multi-user experiences on the web to take advantage of all of the existing content that is already on the web. Starting from scratch, making things only 3D is one approach that can be taken, but we see a lot of potential in being able to support the numerous creators out there who have already spent a lot of time to make all sorts of content that actually works out really nicely in VR and can supplement the 3D experience. Yeah, so you've seen there's a variety of different robots to choose from. We give users the ability to upload their own bodies so they can decide what they want to look like in these spaces. But we think that privacy-preserving accounts and avatars are the right thing to do, especially in the early days of the medium. You know, this room is locked down to whoever has the link, which would be whoever has the link to the original WebXR workshop page, which is just you in here. We think that starting from like privacy and giving the users control is a pretty critical component of multi-user environments. And I've already, like you can already see in here how each of the people in this space right now, your names don't match over your head, which would be a really nice like addition for the next version, is if all of you had your corresponding name over your head so I could see who is who. But you can see people are starting to bring in their own content. You're picking out avatars, you're representing yourself in the space. You're able to bring in and you draw on the space. You can bring in models. And so when you first get started playing around with these types of things, our particular stance on multi-user VR is to give people a lot of creative flexibility and control over their environment. But you can see how, as you extend this idea, you can use this and kind of lock down the room further. You can have specific themes. You can restrict it to specific types of avatars. We have an astronaut joining us, which is excellent. And so, yeah, we see a lot of potential in being able to have these spaces that can facilitate multi-user interactions very quickly and be able to give that creative control to people. But again, like, we're building a kind of general purpose tool with this, and what we think is also equally as important is being able to give those technologies out to other creators who might want to make a really specific type of game, so they could use some of the networking libraries that are out there, or just making it possible for anybody to create their own space that they can immediately invite people to. So we got started just a couple minutes after, but I think I'm getting kind of to the 10-minute-ish mark. I want to make sure that I can open up opportunities for questions or show anything specific. It's interesting. I joined Mozilla back in March, and this is the second talk or workshop I've given about Spoke. So I'm still trying to figure out like how far to go into each of the different components, because it's a lot to talk about in a short period of time. But I do want to open up questions, and if not, I can just show some more content creation stuff. Either I'll start in the back and work forward. Yes. So by default, you'll open up one room per tab, and it will shut you out of the first room if you go to another one. But you can use a query parameter to do multi-session. And let's say I have another room, which I do. I've got several, surprisingly. I can say, I'm going to open this room up just so I can copy the link and then not have it end my session in here. And if I paste this in, we handle this so you can now see that this room is linked together like so. So it's in the space. If you want to jump over and visit that room, you can. Yeah, okay, that's just a default room. So what we try to do with hubs is open up being able to bring in all types of web content. So if you paste in an image, we handle that with an image handler. If you paste in a video, it knows it's a video. If you bring in 3D models, it'll render it and give it the properties of a 3D model. And so the links to other rooms that are built with hubs show up like that. So you basically have a giant visit room button when you hover over it, or if you run your controller trigger over. I'll go to you and then over to you. I think the key lesson that we've learned so far that I'll start with is that we're still learning. So mobile is a really interesting question because there's a lot of different existing designs that aren't universal to different applications. So we actually have a couple of models that we use for like movement and interaction. So one is the idea that when I'm moving and interacting things, I'll start with interaction and then go to movement. When I'm interacting with things in here, I'm clicking and grabbing them. If I'm in VR, I am either using a pointer to kind of click and remotely grab them, or I'm using actual hand controllers to grab them. In mobile, you can like click and drag with your finger, but there's also a lot of other stuff that beyond just like movement that you might want to do with a piece of content. So we actually have this extended menu where if we come over here, you can see it's always on for the avatars, but when I hover over content, it will show all of these different interactions that you can do. So one of the things that we wanted to do is make it so that you have a mode that you can get into in mobile to be able to manipulate individual content. Another thing that we recently did was introduce this object list and the concept of inspection. So if you're on mobile and maybe someone's playing a video, you can actually just go into the object list and have this take up the real estate on your screen. So kind of breaking away from trying to build all of the interactions in a 3D context and taking advantage of the 2D real estate for that is a big thing. But when you think about like movement, going back to movement, on desktop I can use the multiple keys, I can teleport around with my hand controllers or move just freely with the joysticks. On mobile we have two options. You can pinch and zoom to move around the space, and we also do virtual joysticks on the phone. And what we've kind of found is that, at least right now, some people will get kind of accustomed to one of those, but it's probably not the best universal solution. So what we've learned is to keep iterating and experimenting a lot of the times, because we get feedback where, because of the limited real estate, like you can't see a specific element if you're moving. So taking advantage of 2D interactions and also being flexible with controls, I think is what I'd say. Oh, yeah. So email is probably the best way to get in touch with me, oerickson@mozilla.com. If you keep an eye on this workshop link, you'll have the slides link in there, and my email is the first thing. I also have business cards for like the first time ever. I almost never remember to bring them with me when I go places, so you can also come grab me after, and I can give you one of those too. Thank you.